refuge in their family. Everyone has a sense of safety in their family. Right? You could be the worst criminal, but your mom will always forgive you. You could be the worst individual, but your mom will always say, you know, my Jackie's a good boy, or whatever. Because they always say that, isn't it? In your family you have a sense of refuge. Allah says, this deceived and deluded person, what did He say? What does he do? He goes to his family, يَتَمَطَّى, all proud and full of himself and happy, because he knows he has a refuge in his family. What does Allah say about him? أَوْلَى لَكَ فَأَوْلَى ثُمَّ أَوْلَى لَكَ فَأَوْلَى. I don't think there's any place in the Quran where Allah says, woe unto you to any person 4 times in a row. Allah says, woe unto you, and woe unto you, and woe unto you, and woe unto you, even for the 4th time. No, brothers, we don't have that attitude. Because when that person died, look at his end. Like Ibn Qayyim gives the example, he says that there's a man who was dragging his garments, right, out of pride, and a man walked past him and says, don't you know that this is forbidden? Allah and His Prophet have forbidden this, right? You can't do that. He says, أَمَّا تَعْرِفُنِي. He says, you don't know who I am. أَمَّا تَعْرِفُنِي, don't you know who I am? Right? In the sense of, you know, arrogance, pride. The man says, but أَعْرِفُكَ, I do know who you are. He says, أَوَّلُكَ نُطْفَةٌ مَذِرَةٌ وَآخِرُكَ جِيفَةٌ قَذِرَةٌ وَحِشْرُكَ فِي مَا بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ بَوْدٌ وَعِذْرًا. He says, I know who you are. Your beginning is a filthy liquid. That's who you are. Your end is a stinking corpse. That's who you are. And inside of you is only urine and feces. That's who you are. And the man bowed his head in shame and he walked away. Right? Like the poet says, وَلَا تَمْشِي فَوْقَ الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا تَوَاضَعًا فَكَمْ تَحْتَهَا مِنْ قَوْمٍ مِنْكَ أَرْفَعُوا. Don't walk on this earth except with humility. Because how many people underneath the earth were higher than you? Were higher than you? Once the Prophet of Allah said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَنْ أَحَبَّ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ وَمَنْ كَرِهَ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ كَرِهَ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ. Whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him. Whoever hates to meet Allah, Allah hates to meet him. And this hadith was really confusing for the companions. Like they didn't understand it. Even the Prophet's wife, Aisha, she didn't understand it. Allah be pleased with her. And she had to go and ask, what really does this hadith mean? Later on, Abu Hurairah doesn't understand this hadith, and so he goes to Aisha, may Allah be pleased with them both, and he says, oh Aisha, what does this hadith mean? I don't understand this hadith. What does it mean? Because obviously I'm fearful for my sins. What does it mean if I don't like to meet Allah, I don't like to meet me, and so on and so forth? He said, no. She said, what it means, إِذَا شَخَصَ الْبَصَرُ وَحَشْرَجَ الصَّدْرُ وَتَكْشَعَرَ الْجِلْدُ وَتَشَنَّجَتِ الْأَصَابِعُ فَعِنْدَ ذَلِكَ. When the sight is fixed, and when the chest rattles, and when the skin trembles, when the skin tightens, and when the fingers tremble, at that moment in time, whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him. Whoever hates to meet Allah, Allah hates to meet him. What this hadith teaches us is about consistency, right? If you're praying today, make sure you're praying when you die. You're fasting today, by the time you die, make sure you're fasting. You give charity today, what about when the time you die? You think you honor your parents today, you hug them, embrace them, make sure by the time that you die, you're still doing that. You haven't thrown them in some old people's homes, right? To be looked after by strangers who don't know many of the time about what love actually is, or the love of a child towards his father or mother. Be consistent in the things that you do. You remember Allah. What about when you die? Maybe you don't even know what the remembrance of Allah is. And so the Prophet of Allah says, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ يَعْمَلَ زَمَانَ الطَّوِيلِ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. A man acts for a long time like the people of paradise. فِيمَا يَبْدُ لِلنَّاسِ. Until the people, they look at him and say, this man is so pious, he must be a person of paradise. وَهُوَ مِنْ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. But he's a person of hell. وَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ يَعْمَلَ زَمَانَ الطَّوِيلِ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. And a man acts like for a long time like the person of hellfire. فِيمَا يَبْدُ لِلنَّاسِ. Until the people, they think this person is so wretched and foul and evil, he must be a person of hell. وَهُوَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. But he's a person of paradise. Why? Because he says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ. Because actions are by their end. Right? Actions are by the last thing that you die on. What's your last belief? Right? What belief are you taking to Allah? Do you have that clarity? Do you have that sense of unequivocality? What's your belief that you're taking to Allah? What about your worship? You were praying 5 years ago, but now you're meeting Allah. Are you still praying? What did you die upon? That's the focus. So we learn from this the idea of istiqamah, right? Of being upright, about being firm, about being consistent. Allah commanded His Prophet with the same thing, istiqamah. Allah says, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. Be firm as you've been commanded. Be straight as you've been commanded. And Allah commanded the same thing with the believers. Abdullah ibn Abbas said about this term, istiqamah, in the Quran, when Allah uses it, He says, لَمْ يَرُوهُ رَوَدَانَ الثَّعْلَبِ. It means you don't zigzag like the fox. Right? Don't be like a fox. Be consistent. Don't zigzag, be everywhere, like we don't ever see you ever again. You attend one event and you never attend an event until next year. Or you attend one prayer and you don't ever attend the prayer again. What is that? No, be consistent. Istiqamah, we learn about afiyah, we learn about preservation. Right? The Prophet ﷺ taught us to pray for preservation. That Allah preserves us in our religion. Allah preserves us in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies, in our health, in our wealth, in our families. Allah preserves us. In fact, He said in one hadith, الدعاء لا يرد بين الآذان والإقامة. The dua between adhan and iqamah is not rejected or refused by Allah. So the companions asked us, what should we say then, O Prophet of Allah? He said, ask Allah for afiyah fi dunya wal akhirah. Ask Allah for preservation in the dunya and the akhirah. Allah keeps you. Allah keeps you. Allah keeps you firm. Allah makes your foothold firm. Right? You are working continuously. Sister, you're wearing hijab, you keep your hijab. Right? You don't just throw it off. Sister, you're not wearing hijab, you begin to wear your hijab. Brother, you're not praying, you start praying. You don't leave your prayer after that, but you have afiyah, istiqamah, preservation, firmness. Be straight as you've been commanded to be straight. One of the things that we should understand is that although death is in some respects a haunting topic, some things we may be scared of, right? They may trouble us. But in fact, the believer has no fear of death. He has no terror of death. He has a sense of jubilation, a sense of joy to meet his Lord. He is so anxious and so anticipating. Like Imam al-Nawawi says, أَمَّا الْعَارِفْ فَإِنَّهُ يَذْكُرُ الْمَوْتَ دَائِمًا. As for the one who really knows his Lord, he is always anticipating and waiting to die. And he remembers death all the time. لأنه موعد لقاء الحبيب, because it's his appointment with his beloved one. And he never forgets his appointment with his beloved one. And so look at the companions. Bilal radiallahu, this Abyssinian slave, right? Abyssinian slave, the first Abyssinian to become Muslim. The mu'adhin of Islam. When he was dying, Sayyidina Bilal, his wife was in his presence, and his wife, she exclaimed, and she said, Wa taraba, oh, what grief there is that Bilal is going to leave this world today. But Bilal, he said, she said, Wa huzna, oh, what grief there is. Bilal will leave this world, and he said, Wa taraba, oh, what joy there is. Ghadan alqa al-ahibba, Muhammad wa hizba, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Tomorrow I meet my beloved ones, Muhammad and his camp, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so they were anxious, they were waiting, anticipating death. Because they had hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the mercy of Allah. Look at the mercy of Allah. You know, we're approaching the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and they're the best days of the year. The Prophet of Allah said, مَا مِنْ أَيَّامٍ الْعَمَلَ الصَّالِحِ فِيهَا أَحَبُّ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْأَيَّامِ. There are no good deeds that are more beloved to Allah than those that are done in these 10 days. They said, not even jihad in the cause of Allah. So not even that. إِلَّا رَجُلٌ خَرَجَ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ وَمَالِهِ وَلَمْ يَرْجِعْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ بِذَلِكَ وَكَمَا قَالَ. Except for a man who left with his wealth and his person and didn't return with either one of them, meaning he was martyred in the cause of God. The best days of the year, right?